Okay, well, the first thing is a quote from Kierkegaard. There's a few things here, so let me just read the quote. He says, being too busy has this result that an individual very, very rarely is permitted to form a heart. On the other hand, the thinker, the poet, or the religious personality who actually has formed his heart will never be popular. Not because he's difficult, but because it demands quiet and prolonged working with oneself and intimate knowledge of oneself, as well as a certain isolation. So that was the meme, and then somebody made this comment. They said, if you explore this in one of your podcasts, I'll be curious to hear about your take on how much the poet, artist, spiritual person wrestles with this unpopularity and when it stops mattering to them, in brackets, or if it ever does. And that coincided with a letter somebody wrote me where they said, hi John, I had a quick question for you. The past few months I've struggled with interacting with others. I've perceived disgust and annoyance from most of the people around me, whether that be going to the shops, restaurants, or even just walks, giving me odd glances and crossing the other side of the street to avoid me. Now, for some odd reason, people are flocking towards me. I have people asking me for my number, striking random conversations, staring at me awkwardly smiling, and looking towards me like I'm a leader. It's a bit tiresome, actually. People are sticking to me like glue. Nothing feels like it's changed much internally for this to be presenting in reality. I was curious if you had any idea if this is a good sign, something I should watch out for, or just ignore entirely and continue on as usual. So, this is all goes towards this thing of like the spiritual life and what do you do in the spiritual life? How do you interact with people? And it's common. It's very common, and it's not really anybody's. It's not really anything you can gauge or monitor, because it's kind of a wild ride, the spiritual life. There isn't really much. There's nothing set, you know. As soon as something is set, it gets changed, and there really isn't anything you can do about that, which is kind of built into the whole spiritual life thing, because part of it is a process of surrender, where you just kind of have to go along with whatever happens. Not in a passive kind of way, but your focus is being attuned to the movement of the mystery. And it's a wild ride. So like the person in the letter said, one week everyone loves you. Or no, it was the other way around, wasn't it? One week everyone's crossing the street trying to avoid you. And the next week everyone's all over you. And it'll probably go back to the people crossing the street the following week. That's kind of the way it goes. We go through periods, go through changes of this is the way things are, and then it changes, and then they're a different way. The feeling of isolation and loneliness and being on your own, well, it's not like you can go, oh, I'm finding the spiritual life is really damaging my social life. So I think I'll just stop. Maybe you can. I haven't found that to be possible, though. I haven't found it to be something that you can just pick up and put down again when, it suits you. It seems to consume people. They can't get away from it. And in a way, there's a feeling of choice, but there isn't really a choice. Not really. You can't really do anything about it. Because if you're drawn to consciousness, if you're drawn to the spiritual life, well, that's it. That's just the way it is. It's not like you can get away from that. Now that can feel a bit feel like a curse because it separates you. You know, the standard kind of life, whatever that is in your culture, it's not really available to you. You are an outsider, or you can feel like an outsider to that. But there are upsides to that because the sort of things that other people have to deal with in their lives, you don't have to, don't necessarily apply to you. So you can, like for example, people who are interested in the spiritual life, it's much easier for them to do manifestation, to get a handle on manifestation, because they're already primed for it, because they don't believe the illusion of existence so as much as people who are living, in quotes, a normal life. I think it's useful to recognize that you're different, that you're you see things, the things that you're concerned about, other people are maybe not concerned about, and to find your solace, find your company, find your tribe in other ways, which is great. Like, that's why the internet is great, because it used to be like, if you were the only person in the village who was interested in consciousness, that was a pretty lonely life. You really just had to get your relationship with the mystery. That was it. It was just you and the mystery. Because unless you were going to travel, and a lot of people did, that's what a lot of pilgrimages were about, you're not really going to be able to talk to another person about the sorts of things that you want to talk about. Whereas now on the internet, you can find people, you can find like-minded people, you can find all sorts of groups and courses and books and people on YouTube walking on beaches to help you with that sense of feeling isolated. Like it's a regular comment I get on YouTube of people going, "Oh, it's so great to hear you talking about these things that I've been thinking about." So in terms of isolation, you may go through periods of being isolated, and then you may go through periods of being very deeply involved with other people and be constantly around other people. And I think, like anything in the spiritual life, once you don't get attached to any of it, then it just comes and it goes. I've had both. I've had periods in my life when I've been very engaged with people, lots of people around, very busy. And then I've had periods of intense isolation. So it doesn't necessarily follow that, oh well, I'm interested in consciousness, there goes my social life, there goes my friends, there goes my family. No, it doesn't necessarily follow. Similarly, if everybody is crossing the street, you've got to look at the feedback. You've got to, there's like that old joke, if one person tells you an idiot, they are probably an idiot. If three people tell you an idiot, yeah, maybe you're an idiot. That's a bit harsh, but it's the thing of taking the feedback, but not taking it too seriously, not becoming don't use the feedback to kind of add to this feeling of there's something wrong with you. There isn't, but you may go through periods of different things. A lot of it has to do with frequency and resonance, and just what your frequency is. Because sometimes your frequency will be discordant with the frequency of other people, and sometimes it'll be lovely. They'll just love hanging around with you. So yeah, I wouldn't read too much into it, just take note of it and take the feedback. But other than that, I would just keep going with what you're interested in, or what shape your spiritual life takes. I mean, that's hard enough on its own, without sort of having to worry about what other people are thinking of you. You know, that's that's like just going to be hard. That's just hard work, you know. So yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And yeah, don't be attached to the idea of being solitary. You may not be, or you may be for a while. And kind of trust in that the mystery kind of knows what it's doing, you know. And if you're finding yourself being very solitary, then you know that's what needs to happen for now, not forever, just for now. And it'll probably change. It'll probably become something else, and to be okay with that.